some of the possible products on the menu. Firstly, there's two foci. One is materials for Indigenous and local communities themselves to help them to understand the convention's processes so that they effectively participate in our processes, so their voices are heard and decisions are made in their best interests. And then the second foci is, of course, raising awareness in the general public about the important role of Indigenous peoples, our traditional knowledge, and conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity. So we sort of have two-prong attack, and a list of possible activities, and we're still in the process of developing this, is, for instance, animation. I've been talking to a number of Indigenous web designers and animators, as well as some animators in Japan who are interested in producing something that could be used on television, airlines, downloaded as a screensaver, something that may be 30 seconds long, but it has an important message about the important role of Indigenous peoples in conservation and sustainable use. Also community-based short films and videos by Indigenous peoples where people talk about what biological diversity, plants and animals, and their knowledge means to them. We're planning an exhibition at headquarters here next year during the Permanent Forum. Similar, you can see those of you who went to the Cultural Night, there's already an exhibition we have every year, but next year we want the focus to be on Indigenous peoples and biodiversity. Also, UNESCO has produced some very interesting posters which you can see around the world in partnership with Indigenous peoples that look at the important role of traditional knowledge. And we would like to join with them to ensure that the posters are translated into the UN languages and Indigenous languages and are further distributed. And also a participation guide for Indigenous and local community representatives to make sure they can effectively participate in our processes. And as well as this, we have an Article 8J newsletter which is called Pachamama, which is Quechua for Mother Earth. And currently I've got copies available over here in English and Spanish, and next year we hope to produce them in English, Spanish and French. The methodology, of course, is we're trying to make sure the products are developed by Indigenous peoples for Indigenous communities, and also by Indigenous peoples for the general public, and where possible in multiple languages and multiple formats, because we want to have innovative and diverse media formats. So that's sort of taken you through the outline of the work that I have, but I want to mention some related things. I'm also working with the Indigenous Women's Biodiversity Network of Latin American region to deliver 7 sub-regional workshops to build capacity in how to effectively participate in the CBD processes. And with the Indigenous women in Latin America, we're now developing an electronic accredited online course about the CBD, where people will study 2 hours a day over a period of about 10 weeks, and the course will be finalized by bringing people together for an intensive 3 or 4 day course together. So I think it's very important, particularly as an Indigenous educator, I became aware that Indigenous people sit through thousands of workshops, but we never have any formal qualifications to show for it. So it's good to be working with Indigenous women in Latin America to ensure that people actually have recognition for this training in the form of a diploma. So I'm very excited about that development. And the Secretariat also has a program called Green Wave, where through planting trees in schools, it becomes a focus for environmental education. And the focus, of course, is on planting Indigenous trees in schools and the environmental education that goes on around us. So that's a quick introduction to the body of work by the convention, and we'll be developing these products this year, and no doubt those of you who are at the Permanent Forum or some of these other meetings next year will get an opportunity to see these materials, and of course we'll be trying to distribute them through our Indigenous organisations to reach more broadly grassroots communities. Maybe that's enough for me.